This is Autoline After Hours with John McElroy and Gary Vasilash, episode 581 for December 2nd of 2021. Are car dealers doomed? Watch Autoline After Hours live at Autoline.tv every Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. That's 12 p.m. Pacific. You can subscribe to this podcast for free by searching for Autoline in iTunes, Stitcher, or YouTube.
Autoline After Hours is brought to you by Bridgestone Tires, solutions for your journey, and by Magna.
Mr. Gary V.
How are you, John?
I'm doing great. I can't wait to get into today's show.
It's going to be a good show.
But first, you're going to stump me and make me look like an idiot.
No. You'll be very, very close on this one. Okay, so sales,
so only partial idiot.
So we're going to be talking about sales, okay,
and dealers and
dealers and things like that. Okay, so yesterday the traditional companies that are still reporting monthly sales reported their sales, and then of course Ford, being Ford, always waits an extra day so it can be by itself, and so it reported its sales this morning. Okay, so with that as a setup, so last month, Ford sold 3,088 Mach-E's. Okay?
That's right.
3,088 Mach-E's. So my question to you is, what did it sell 3,746 of? Okay, so it's 3,088 Mach-E's. Then you tell me what it sold 3,746 of.
I think you might have tipped your hand on this earlier this week when we were talking. I want to say the EcoSport.
You're wrong.
Okay, what?
All of its cars.
Oh my gosh, all the sedans.
All the so it sold 3,709 Mustangs, 14 GTs, and 23 Fusions.
Wow.
That is the portfolio of Ford cars. So basically, it was within 700 units of the Mach-E alone. So I think that says something about the transition to what we're seeing. But before we get to that, we should get to our guests.
Let's do that. Let's bring in Jenni Newman and Dan Neal. Hey, Jenni.
Hi.
And hello, Dan.
Hi, guys. How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Not bad.
All right. So did either of you guess that?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good answer.
How can you tell when Dan's lying?
Yeah, I'm not a battery engineer. No, my lips are moving. No, I would have said all the other kinds of Mustangs combined.
But did include that. I mean, so it is quite surprising that, there was just like 37 vehicles that were not Mustangs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, remember the Fusion is gone. I mean, they're just selling whatever few units are left in inventory. The GT is what, $500,000? I mean, that limits sales just a bit. And then you're left with the Mustang, and that's it, at least in the U.S. market. Here's the real question I want to know, though, is those are U.S. sales number. What are the global sales numbers for the Mach-E? Presumably they're shipping them to Europe. They're making them in China. I'd love to know what the total sales are.
Yeah,
probably more than the Mustang.
Well, then we need to know global Mustang sales, because I want to say, I can't remember off the top of my head, but at least 10 to 12% of those Mustangs are sold overseas.
Yeah, probably at a loss given the logistics and everything else involved, which makes the marketing expenses, which is probably a smart way to write them down.
I don't know, Dan. Mustangs are pretty expensive overseas. I doubt they're selling them for a loss.
Okay.
They mark them up.
Good.
They mark them up.
So.
They learned that.
I'd love them.
So Jenni, does that Ford number surprise you at all, or are you seeing there at cars.com just a trend away from cars into other types of vehicles, even those that are not electric?
So it's really an interesting time right now to be watching the automotive space, right? when I look at inventory, we are using Cars.com's internal inventory. And you'll have to forgive me because I have not yet updated these numbers with November results. But what I can tell you is that new car inventory has dropped as much as 60%. So, the fact that people are buying Fusions that haven't been made for a while, that's even that little number is sort of interesting. I think, people are grabbing what they can when they can find them. And I'm very curious what the orders would be for various vehicles, what kind of orders Ford is looking at around the Maverick, what kind of orders they're looking at around, F-150s, things like that, because they did have that incentive to encourage new car shoppers to order their vehicles that they were interested in. So I'd love to hear that, but I'm sure Ford's not going to share that anytime soon.
Well, here's a question for you, Jenny. I'm told, I haven't been out shopping for a new car, but I'm told if you order your car, you will pay less for it than if you buy off the lot. Have you heard that?
No. And actually, I can tell you, I've ordered 2 cars. And I bought one off the lot. I've had a year.
No kidding.
So
did a tornado come through or something?
Yeah.
2 words, teen driver.
Oh.
So I had to replace one of my vehicles. And so I ended up buying a used car. And that was a really interesting experience because there was no haggling right now. For me, the price was the price. And, I'm a pretty informed shopper. So going in, I knew what I was walking into. I've also recently, for Cars.com, for the editorial team, we just purchased a Tesla Model Y. So we did order that vehicle, and we are going to be writing about that car and sort of the ordering experience. We really wanted to experience that. And then personally, I've also ordered an EV, and the price is the price when it comes to the EV that I ordered, which was a VW ID4. So
did they mark it up? Did you have additional dealer markup in any of that?
So far, no. I'm curious.
So far?
So I wonder if that's because
you that vehicle in my hands, I take nothing for granted.
I wonder if that's because you ordered it. Because, like I said, I'm told that if you want to buy off the lot, boom, you're going to pay through the nose for it.
But John, don't you think that? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go, Dan.
I was just going to say, there can be markups right now, and that is because of the limited inventory, and that's something shoppers need to be aware of.
You're going to say, Dan?
I was going to say, don't you think that in the long run, that's the natural evolution for dealers, is that dealers probably recede to, another kind of retail model that's much more specialized with fewer units on the lot. And, we have known for some time that the dealership economic model is troubled. Even if you have a successful dealership, it's hard to, make it go. And so I think more online sales would be natural, and encouraging them with lower prices online would make a whole lot of sense. It's more expensive to. I think it's the European model where you order the car and there's savings along the line before it gets delivered to you.
That's right,
Dan. But you said it's the European model, and the traditional approach here is, go in to buy a red one and get a blue one and get a blue one with mats, right?
Yeah, I agree. Again, this is another sign of a cultural change around the culture of cars, and it seems like a natural evolution. I am a huge believer in creative destruction, and I believe that this is a good development for a derelict retail model.
So it was interesting. So Cox Automotive, Charlie Chesbrough, who is an economist with Cox, has been on the show several times, and they did some research on purchasing habits of consumers in automotive, and 80% of the people surveyed said that they would be interested in doing partial online shopping, 25% full-on online shopping. Okay. And they're predicting that as much as 25% of global auto sales will be done online by 2025. Okay, but this sort of gets to your point, Dan, of the Europeans could very easily do that by ordering it online. And I just wonder, whether we would be laggards here. But that number of 25% saying that they would want to do this entirely online, I mean, that's a big damn number.
I don't mean, I probably am naive on this subject, but here's what I seem to be seeing, that there's a great deal of money to be made by keeping inventories tight, prices high. The way this is going is almost has a sort of, it's better to be lucky than good quality about it for these dealerships, because I mean, dealerships are used to keeping 3,000 units on the lot for a month. That's, that was had all kinds of distortions and perturbations, and making people hate the experience, making salespeople jump off the building at the end of the month. It was a terrible way to do business. So why don't we admit that it was a terrible way to do business, and and move on from that model? The only, as far as I'm concerned, the biggest concern for me is that local dealerships represent, in many cases, the most active economic business, a thriving business in these small communities. Now, that is a social cost. That social, if you pardon the expression, welfare should address. The common good. The common good would be served if we provided for this displacement we're talking about. Because you're not going to need it. How many dealerships are there, by the way, in the United States? Do you know, Gary?
No, I don't.
I know. Well, I know that there's 16,600 franchise dealers. So,
Wow.
Well, here's the topic I want to get into, getting back to these additional dealer markups above and beyond the MSRP. I can't believe how everybody just shrugs their shoulders and says, well, yeah, this is the normal way that markets work and blah, 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 blah. To me, it's outrageous that dealers can mark up cars as much as they're doing. If we have a big storm that comes through the area and people make a run on gasoline or water, if stores starts to jack up the prices of that stuff, the governor steps in and looks, it starts sicking the attorney general on them for price gouging. Why do we accept this on the part of car dealers? And isn't this the best example for getting rid of them anyway?
Well, first, I don't think we want to get rid of them, just because, to the point that Dan was making, right? They're an important part of the local economy. I also think that consumers or shoppers need to remember that they do have some control. So if someone is marking up the car and it is well beyond what you agreed to, use your feet, walk away, go find another dealer who you're going to have a better experience with, right?
You will be walking though, because you don't have a car.
Well, definitely make sure you don't hand them the keys to what you're trading in before you make that decision. But
Park off a lot, right?
Consumers still do have power. It's a bit of an interesting situation right now with the limited inventory, especially on the new side. So, it is a concern, but consumers.
But doesn't this get to the point that oddly, okay, so there are two things it seems that are this way. One is housing, and then the other is automobiles. Okay, so houses cost whatever houses cost, but essentially all houses are custom built. They're one-offs in many ways, right? Cars are built to a standard. The amount of metal, the amount of fasteners, the amount of assembly time, the amount of glass, everything has a price, right? So there is a known price for it. So John, this gets back to your point of whether there's price gouging going on. Well, when the MSRP just seems to be a suggestion and not the actual price, an automobile basically has no set price. Therefore, it seems to me that a dealer can say, whatever I can get for this, and that's what I'm going to take.
It's a feature. It is written into the bylaws of the franchise rules that they are independent agents and they can sell that car for whatever they want. Ferrari, Ford, they all do the same thing for the same reason. And these now, yes, we have these momentary, this temporary situation, but what I'm thinking is more reflective of permanent dynamics to come. And that goes along with the fact that this affordability problem is not going to get better. It's going to get worse until and unless car makers start to bring down prices to reflect their lower BOM and assembly costs finally in the age of electrification.
So
look,
for those,
I think
those who are watching, we got to say what BOM is. So that's bill of materials. So just so people know what Dan's talking about there.
Yeah, but what the the dealers are handing the market on a platter to the startups who are not going to use dealerships. Because you're going to go online, you're going to say, here's what the price of the car is. You're going to go and get it from a startup for that price. Startups can raise their prices too. Tesla raised prices twice last month, which is kind of unbelievable. But nonetheless, you do all your research as a consumer. You see, hey, here's the price of the car. This is the MSRP. You go in there and no, the dealers added thousands of dollars. And you guys have seen the stuff on Corvettes and other hot stuff. 10, 20, 30,000 bucks higher. I mean, it's all to me
$96,000 RAV4 Prime.
Yeah. To me, that is they're slitting their throats in the long run. They're pissing people off, and they're going to remember that when inventory gets good and all that, and everybody says, aren't dealers great? And the dealers need that kind of public support. People are going to remember that first chance they got, the dealer screwed them as much as he could.
But again, I think that if that dealer, if they aren't happy with the dealer, if there's a vehicle that's, crazy on the pricing side, they're not going to go back, and most likely they're going to have a long memory. So dealers need to play the long game here too, right? And remember that this is a moment. Now it could last a year, it could last well through 2022, who knows? But those dealers that are working with consumers and are going to have a better runway for as far as relationships. And those relationships are really important because when you're buying vehicles, you're coming back to those dealers often for service, right? So that's a big part of that dealer network, having those dealers close enough by that you can easily get your car serviced. That's where a lot of dealers make a lot of money. So it's important.
But if you bought the car and you feel like the dealer screwed you because the dealer could, and I agree with you, Jenny. I know really good dealers. I'm not trying to say they're all like this, but the public perception is dealers are out to get them. And are you going to bring your car back to service at a dealer that you thought screwed you over when you bought the thing in the first place? I don't think so.
Oh my God, it's a time machine. We're in the 50s Detroit again. Holy shit. Well, we couldn't possibly have made the investment in this dealership that we've made if we didn't have your business back the next year and the next year. No, what's happening is that a sizable percentage of these entrepreneurs are getting the hell out while the getting is good. And I believe the premise of this was if there's price gouging, of course, there's wild price gouging. It's insane. And to your point, John, where's the outrage? Well, we have a lot of cognitive dissonance as capitalist consumers. We are both citizens and consumers. And on the one hand, we're appalled by this very undemocratic way to do business. But on the other hand, we've been told, raised from birth to so it's a free market, it's free enterprise, it's the cost of capitalism business. So, and right now we're at this point where capitalism may not be serving the environment very well because we can't make this transition without lining everybody's pockets on the way out.
Okay, but what about the situation of an entire generation of people growing up saying, why do I go to a store of any sort to buy anything? Why should I go to this dealership, cappuccino machine notwithstanding, to buy a vehicle?
What does the dealer give you?
So what's the point of a dealer to that person?
Well, I think, so if you're buying a cell phone, right, you want to experience it. And so whether that's you're using your friend's latest, version of the iPhone or the Android or whatever, I think when you're buying a vehicle, you still want to test drive it. You still need to experience it. If you're 6'6", tall, you want to know if you're going to fit into this vehicle, right? Are your kids' car seats going to fit into the back seat? Those are things that you need to do in person. And so I think you mentioned earlier in this discussion, a hybrid model when it comes to dealerships. And I think that's where dealers are evolving to, right? You think about what's been going on in this pandemic and how quickly they shifted from come in, let's talk, let's have you check out the car, you got to stay in this dealership, while we work through all the details, to now it's virtual appointments, home delivery for test drives or the vehicle that you purchased, right? All these different ways that you can do the process online, but there's still sort of that gap where you do need to experience that vehicle in person and assess whether or not it's the right fit for you.
Well, I'll absolutely stipulated, but what we're talking about is the segment itself taking a pretty good haircut. We're talking about thousands of independent dealerships going out of business because the model that they have been raised with, and in some cases gotten fat and lazy on, is going away. Again, that's not all to the bad.
So what do you guys think is going to happen? Jenny, to your point, maybe it's a hybrid and you still go to the dealership to do some amount of shopping. What most car dealers tell me is people walk in the door, they already know what they want. Now it's just haggling over the price. But let's say you don't need to go to the showroom anymore. And let's say going forward, to Dan's point, they're not going to have acres and acres of cars in inventory. They're going to slim that down completely or substantially. Where's that leave dealerships? I mean, they've got gigantic parking lots. They've got gigantic showrooms. Are they going to keep that? They're going to downsize? What do y'all think is going to happen?
Go ahead, Jenny. Take it.
Where's my crystal ball? They could divest, right, of some of that land that they have. There's a lot of land involved in dealerships here in the U.S. Perhaps they're going to more of that showroom model. Maybe it's more. I was at the mall. Poor choice in life, but I was at the mall the other day, and Lucid was there with their showrooms, right? Mm-hmm. So is it some sort of new version of a retail center where you've got some vehicles to drive, but not all of them, not every trim, not every color. And then you're pushing what's on your lots is more of your used inventory. So, that model works when we're talking about new, but also we need to think through used. And to your point, there is a lot of dealer consolidation going on right now. It seems like every week we're reading about a large group buying more and more of these smaller dealers. So there's a lot of shifts happening, not only in the way that we shop for cars, but also, who we shop for cars with.
That's an interesting point because, like farming, car dealerships could easily be demagogued in a political season. Mom and pop dealerships driven out of business by heartless whoever, pick your villain. And of course, it's a much more complicated situation than that. But it's, as I say, it's easily to mischaracterize. But is no one going to suggest go-kart tracks? Really? No one.
What do you mean go-kart tracks?
I'm talking about a franchise-based model of independent go-kart tracks, coast to coast. Shifter carts. Maybe late model sportsmen, depends on the sanctioning body. I'm just saying there's a lot of racing to be done, and I think I know how to get it done.
Dan, I think that's a generational comment, so we'll just leave it at that.
Yeah.
So Jenny, just going back to that dealership or that store, the Lucid store in the shopping mall. So I'm assuming that they didn't have a whole bunch of heirs parked in the back 40 of that mall, and that a person who was going in there, perhaps they signed him up for a test drive, or the person said, I just want it.
Well, or what I also saw, and this was, 10 minutes that I was in there just poking around, was a lot of aspirational shoppers, I'll call them. So a lot of younger adults and who really just wanted to check out this gorgeous car, right? Take some selfies with it. And that's an interesting way to build some buzz around a vehicle that, for most people is probably not that affordable. So yeah, I think as far as test driving, that's a little bit different. You're not gonna be finding a couple of these vehicles in the parking lot at most malls, I would say. Mm-hmm. But it's interesting that they're putting the showroom, so to speak, where a wide variety of people are, mm-hmm. rather than having it, at the one side of town where all the other dealers are.
The auto mall.
Yeah, the auto mall, right.
All right, so let me switch this a little bit. So KMPG did a global automotive executive survey. This was over 1,000 executives. This included OEM, suppliers, dealers, finance people, just an array of people who are at an executive level that are, they make their livelihoods in the auto industry. And one of the findings that they have is that 84% think subscriptions for vehicles will be competitive to sales and lease by 2030. And now, if they go further into the subscription thing, is that 45% think that the OEMs are the best to control subscriptions, and only 22% think dealers should be the ones that are at the forefront of this. So what do you make of that finding?
Dan,
Anybody?
That's all you. Just kidding.
Oh, that's all me, of course. Well, being the wonk on the panel, obviously, that's let me just bat that back. Those numbers don't surprise me at all. The 20% number doesn't surprise me. As far as subscriptions, are leases subscriptions by any other name? And how much term of art are we allowing here? If we say, was it half by 2030 subscription base? Is that the number? And
no, it's 84%.
Oh,
84% think that it'll be competitive to sales or lease.
I think they probably are well informed on that subject, and I think that there's also some terms of art here between lease and subscription. Volvo Discover is largely the same, But yeah, that sounds right. And I would not administer it through the dealerships if I could help it. But how much administration will there be? What do you think, Jenny?
I think that this is more of a high-end vehicle approach to cars, right? To ownership or leasing. Are you going to see that with a Toyota Corolla? I doubt it. Right. The experiments that have been done so far from various automakers, they've been more on the high end. And when we did a deeper dive into leases versus subscriptions, and of course, leasing was the better deal. Now, that was a couple of years ago. And I think the subscription model will continue to evolve and maybe pull in more interested shoppers. But, when you think about some of those luxury automakers and how the hook sometimes is, well, you can subscribe to this plan, you can drive this car, and then you can swap it out for something different. That sounds really great, but I don't know.
I have a question. For Ms. Newman, please, may I? What are the salient differences? What are the top three? Explain it to me as if I were a child. What are the differences?
I'd have to go back and read my article, to be honest with you, and it's not my article, so I should say that out loud. But I think it's really just the expense of it, how much you're paying for the vehicle.
It's the convenience, right? Because everybody knows the cheapest way to buy a car is pay cash for it. Boom, done. No interest rates, no nothing. But not everybody's got that much cash at a single time to lay out. So you go and you get a bank loan. Now you're paying interest on it. Or you can lease the car and only pay for that part of the car that you use. That's the argument. But guess what? Leasing is not a gift to the consumers. It's just a different way of manipulating things around. So yeah, the lease looks very cheap on a monthly payment basis, but 3 years later, boom, you got to lay down even more cash to get another lease. And now comes subscription services, which bundles insurance and maintenance and all that stuff together. It's not a gift to the consumer. It's another way of just making things simpler. There's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with it whatsoever, because it will definitely help sales. But subscription services, to your point, Dan, is really no different than leasing. It's just that it's got insurance and maintenance and all that baked into it.
So the convenience is really that's the number.
One payment. You give one payment. You're not getting bills from the insurance company. You're not getting mechanic. You just one bill. You don't even think about it ever again. People are willing to pay a premium for that kind of peace of mind.
So, but what is interesting to me about this is the fact that this is, we're talking about dealerships, and this is a route for disintermediation of dealers. Because if they're saying, oh, the OEM should handle this, and let's say that there are three tracks to getting a vehicle, buy, lease, or subscribe, that, they could be, losing even more of their business in the not too distant future.
They could, but hey, look, we got to take a quick commercial break. So save that. Ask that question again, Gary. But first, a shout out to our good friends at Bridgestone and Magna. And we're back. And you were going to say, Gary?
No, so briefly, I'm just wondering whether or not subscriptions is another thing that will cause dealers to lose more of their business as we go forward. And this is the last topic of dealers.
Oh, I could go on for hours. Actually, I've devoted my life to this subject, so I'm glad I had a chance to talk about it. No, really, I don't deal with the retail side at all because dealers are scary. I mean, they wait for you after work and stuff like that if you say bad things about their cars. But yeah, I think de-emphasizing, as you say, decentralizing and disintermediating dealers is inevitable. I think it has many upsides. I think it represents, some creative destruction in a, as I said, fairly ossified retail structure. I do worry about the immediate social effects, and I think that. Here in the last blaze of glory, a lot of dealers are earning the hell that they eventually will find themselves in by overcharging people, long-term customers. It just makes the ground so ready for startups and people to come in and, as John said, pull the rug out from under them.
Yeah, I think there's a lot there. I think that, it could be, if we're looking a little bit at what Volvo is doing, they're playing around with their approach, right? And kind of going to more of a service model for some of their dealerships. So maybe that's the path forward as far as subscriptions. I think 2030 seems really optimistic to really make inroads on that, but again, no crystal ball over here, so I guess we'll find out.
Okay, so one of the things that struck me was that for a long time, there seemed to be this buzz that Apple was going to be getting into the automotive business. They started their Project Titan in 2014. Then sometimes it was, it was going up. Oh, they're going to do it, and then they're not going to do it. And a couple of weeks ago, Mac Rumors, which obviously is a source of information that is based on Mac Rumors, came out and had a piece that starts, Apple is now rumored to be working on a fully autonomous self-driving vehicle that will not require user intervention to drive, going further than any other car manufacturer to date. It's a highly ambitious project, and rumors indicate that Apple wants to design a car with no steering wheel and no pedals. So, two questions to you. Is Apple going to make anything? And if they make something, would it be something like that? Silence.
I'm trying not to.
Take it, Dan.
Trying not to talk to you. I get carried away. I've been locked down here in this room for a long time, so I need people to talk to. Look, Apple will put their brand on something. Certainly, at some point in the next 5 to 10 years, there will be the icon on a vehicle of some sort in some market or other, whether it's the U.S. market, I don't know. What I think, as far as it being autonomous with no controls, yeah, I have no problem with that because I expect those vehicles will be sold with very clear use restrictions, zoned restrictions. They'll have flashing lights. They'll be geofenced to the nth degree. You won't be able to throw yourself in front of one. That's how how they I was trying to convince them, just block traffic. Anyway, yes, they will definitely have one of those, and it will definitely have less going for it than anything that Tesla puts out in terms of full self-driving and autopilot, because those guys are, a decade ahead of anybody.
I just think it's interesting you mentioned geofencing. So that speaks to not only how much development needs to happen for this car, and I think we should use the word car loosely on this. It seems like it's a pod, but also that there's a lot of infrastructure that will need to be put in place to make this work. When we see concept cars from various automakers, when they're dreaming 10 and 15 years out, you get a lot of sort of this mobile living room where there's no steering wheel, there are no controls, right? There's a screen and you input something and that's the vision. And so it's interesting that you see sort of this congregation of different ideas around what the future of automotive looks like. But yeah, I just envision it as a pod,
I agree. I think pod's a good name. Pod car goes back to the railroad industry. It's not very reflective of what we're doing now.
John, what do you think?
Well, look, there's probably a lot of money to be made in robocars if and when they're available. And I agree with Dan, they're going to be geofence, but those geofence posts are going to be moving farther and farther apart every single year until they go from sea to shining sea.
Again, very appropriate.
But Apple, they're late, man. I mean, look at all the startups that are pouring into the market, both here and in China. We don't see a whole lot of startup activity in Europe. So by the time Apple rolls around, I mean, it's got its name to rely on, its brand to rely on, but man, are they going to be late to the party?
So what is it that Apple brings to the auto industry? I mean, that's the thing that I find to be the most mysterious. Okay, they completely transformed phones, right? I mean, the iPhone, they came out, suddenly they have this premium phone. Everyone ended up wanting it, right? And yet there are premium cars out there right now. I mean, Jenny, you mentioned the Lucid. I mean, $169,000 seems pretty premium to me.
This is where Google and Apple feel they're missing out. They control all aspects of our lives. They're in our phones, they're in our laptops, they're in our iPads, they're in our desktops. They're not in our cars, unless our phone hooks up and then they're there a bit, but they need that data. They want that data. I mean, as somebody said the other day, cars don't just emit emissions, they emit data. And that's what Apple and Google are really after, is that aspect of the data they can't get their mitts on right now. That what I believe is motivating Apple to really want to get into. I wouldn't be surprised if Google decides, that they've got to do more than just what Waymo's getting them.
So funny you should say that, John, because going back to that KMPG study, 62% think Google will be coming out with a branded vehicle, which is higher than the 60% that think Apple will, which is followed. And this is the one that I find to be very interesting. 58% think that Amazon will come out with a branded car.
Why not?
Vehicle.
It's all about getting the data. The car is just a conduit to getting that.
And what if instead of, actually coming out with a car that they've developed, really they're able to jump forward on self-driving features that then they can sell to other automakers, and therefore there's some really new revenue streams for them, right? They're able to expand into a whole new area. That's what I wonder about with this Apple car. And I just find it so interesting that it keeps, that they start and they stop and they start and they stop. I wonder
they better hurry up. They better hurry up. Look, Cruise LLC, they're off to the races. Waymo's way down the road. Ford and Volkswagen with Argo are there. And there's a bunch of others on the commercial truck side. So, I mean, if the other tech companies are thinking about, like Apple and Amazon are thinking about getting, man, the train's leaving the station.
May I dream with me a moment? So what if there, in this case, there's a real opportunity in waiting against a backdrop of profound commodification of the electric vehicle generally, which, as we, if you sort of play out that that vision. It is a very standardized battery and motors north and south. There's only so much you can do with that. So against that backdrop, you have these tech companies offering skins, user environments that it can be applied to any number of sort of more generic products, thereby transforming them into the preferred and familiar UX, like the Apple UX. You asked, what did they bring to the consumer? A unitarity of UX, and they people know just how to use this thing no matter what, right? It comes very naturally. That's what they brought, the UX, and I see that could easily be projected onto a blank screen of a fairly generic platform.
All right, so
yeah, you got to get the super styling. You got to get your panels. You got to order the panels so it looks like a Raptor or something.
So basically, there'll be a company that will be building the platform and sell it to Google and sell it to Amazon and sell it to Apple and sell it to anybody, and then the skins would be
Mr.
that,
Vasilash, I've been reading your publication for many years, and I believe I have seen many articles about rapid hydroforming, soft tooling, 3D printing, all using chitin cellulose and pectin as materials. I think it's absolutely possible that people will be able to print out their exteriors, but you're going to have to throw away another obsolete thing, and that is the Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Standard book, which is just as archaic as it can be. It's like it should apply to airships and zeppelins and things like that. So I should probably stop talking.
Yeah. Yeah, let's not even go down the rabbit hole of federal safety standards.
There's nobody home. There hasn't been anybody home.
Oh my God, it takes forever to write new rules.
Uncle Pete's going to get her done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I do think what you were saying about the skins, right, and bringing that UX into drivers' hands, it's really important when we think about the millennials and the Gen Z, right? They grew up with this technology. It's kind of baked into who they are. And so why wouldn't they expect that in their vehicles, right? In their homes, all of it's just going to keep going. It's
I know there are people
everywhere.
like, people my age sitting there, you're going, but they care about the machine because that's what they're familiar with and that's what they vibe with. Kids are agnostic about the machine generally. They're more interested, I should say, with the tech.
So why is it that, I'm still sort of mystified by this whole Apple car notion from the point of view of, yes, people have these, people love these, people use these. And yet if I'm a person getting into a vehicle and I can basically sync my phone with the, let's say, full screen display that goes from A pillar to A pillar, and that would make me very happy. But, somehow having an Apple badge on the outside of that, what does it bring to the party? I mean, it's almost reminds me of when they used to build cell phones into vehicles because people needed that. And it's just like, well, why couldn't people just walk into the vehicle with their phone, even if it was the size of a brick? I mean, it didn't matter.
Oh man, go ahead, Jenny. I'll stand by. I'll hold your coat.
I mean, jump in on this. I think I'm an Apple user, have been for years, right? So are you tapping into a ready-made consumer base basically by creating this Apple car, and essentially you have all these Apple enthusiasts who will jump into it? I think about the way that people have the way that they really have glommed on to Tesla, right? And how the level of enthusiasm for everything Tesla, for everything Elon does, right? I just wonder if that's Apple looking to sort of recreate that in their own vision.
Gary, the brand, it's brand. It's all brand. A brand is a metaphor. A brand is a big tent. This is it's a psychic space. It's an expression of values. I mean, and Apple and Tesla both have these huge tents that bring people together. I'm not at all surprised. Let's see, what's the competitor to Apple? Like what? Android? No, what would it be like? IBM? Does IBM have anything like that magic in the marketplace? I don't think so.
Not anymore.
Yeah, and I think it's a towering brand, and I totally get why people do it. Why it would represent the shortest path in that business is to put a great brand on a otherwise generic product and call it Apple.
Well, look, the whole transportation thing is probably going to explode. I mean, the estimates today are the automotive industry in its totality is at about a $2.5 trillion industry, and it's projected to hit $3 trillion, or what am I saying, $5 trillion by the end of the decade. And it all comes down to not just selling the cars. It comes down to selling miles with robo-taxis. It comes down to controlling the UX in that car and capturing all the data. Why would you not, as being Apple, want to be part of that? I mean, $2.5 trillion growth in a decade. That's, I would imagine any CFO at any company would say, how do we become a part of this?
Do you think? Go ahead.
So just think about where Apple is pushed. Apple was computers. They created the smartphone, Apple TV. Now they have their own programming, right? They just keep stretching out into all aspects of our lives. So it does make sense to me.
That was what I'm glad you said that, because in some ways it feels like maybe in terms of the not invasion of privacy, but the permittivity of privacy, that we've reached, a really high watermark. I think people are going to start to push back, especially when insurance companies are going to want to charge you based on your driver behavior, which information they can get 6 ways from Sunday. And they, to get that data as compared to what they'll save in premiums and repairs would be pennies on the dollar. Any responsible executive would make that choice, right? But in the larger world, it's a fairly marginal case. Do we want these companies who are, they're accountable to stockholders, but not necessarily to the public, to have this kind of this window that we can't close? I think we've reached that point now, pretty much.
So basically, we've sort of thrown a bit of cold water onto the whole dealership model. We've talked about how companies like Tesla and Apple can own the industry. So I say to you, what of the General Motors and the Fords and the Stellantises of the world? What does their future look like?
I think they're running hard to catch up and define it, right? I mean, for years we've been watching them buy all these ancillary different companies around EVs, around data, around all sorts of areas. And so I think it's still in progress, of course, but they're trying. They're moving in that direction. Are they moving fast enough?
My worry isn't for GM and Ford so much. I think they're pretty aggressive with their plans. The ones I worry about are Toyota and Stellantis. Volkswagen, I think, is pretty committed to the transition as well. They've got a rough road because they're dealing with the German unions. But I would say GM, Ford, and Volkswagen, I think, are probably doing the best of the traditionals. And the rest of them are in trouble.
Well, let's stipulate to the first, and as to the second grouping, Stellantis and Toyota, there's no way to put any kind of dimensions on this from where we sit. But I do think it's interesting that buyers have they vote with their dollars. There's a lot more buying by conscience out there, values buying. And I think that, and I don't think that Toyota and Stellantis, Toyota has really lost a lot of goodwill with the environmental community by what is obviously a retrograde effort to hold back batteries in order to blunt the worst of the social costs. And I would say to them, if you're attempting to blunt social costs by creating more, climate threatening pollution, you're looking at the wrong solution. And, so I think that Toyota and Stellantis are going to have a hard time, being a feel-good purchase in the future.
So Dan, just to clarify, what you're suggesting is that, Akio Toyota basically said that if we make the transition to electric vehicles, that because electric vehicles have fewer parts, we'll have fewer people working, and therefore therein lies the social problem.
He made the linkage explicit, and he isn't the only one. Tavares said. Now, he also said it would cost 50% more to build an electric car. Yeah, the way they build it, it does. But which I thought was like, are you serious? Did you not hear Mr. Herbert Diess? Did you not hear the Volkswagen guy say they're outbuilding us 3-1? So anyway, there's a lot of whistling past the graveyard, including Mary Barra saying that General Motors leads the world in electrification. I'm like, sure they do. Sure they do. I
don't know that she said that. President Biden said that.
No, he said it too. It was crazy when he said it, and it was crazy when she said it. No, she was being interviewed on one of the panels, and she said, we're not going to cede our leadership position in electrification to anybody. I was like, well, yeah, I bet you won't. And so I know you're just trying to set me up, Gary, asking me this question. So I'm going to
take full
withdraw my
opportunity. Yeah. What do you think, Jenny?
I mean, Stellantis is definitely, they've come out with a plan, right, to bring on the EV muscle car, so to speak. The Hellcats are going the way of, I guess, the Dodo. So they're trying, they're pushing on it. They know, but as we were discussing earlier, they're playing catch up, right? Just like Apple is playing catch up with all of these other startups. Stellantis is playing catch up, and Toyota's, that seems to be a lot more of there's a lot more politics going on behind that area, behind their hesitation. That's really fascinating to watch.
So just to stir the pot, I'm going to throw BMW and Mercedes in as companies that are approaching this very tepidly, at least right now at this snapshot in time. They're trying to have both worlds, right? So they're taking conventional ICE cars, modifying them to be electric. And I understand, hey, you save a lot of capital costs, you use existing facilities. You also come out with a compromised EV. And, we'll see, it's still early days. I'll make a more direct judgment call in 2 or 3 years. But right now, I'd say their efforts are mighty weak, and they're opening the door to the startups.
I have a question for you. So it is taken as an article of faith, certainly among 21st century auto management, that 6 to 8% quarterly returns is the same as gravity, right? That just happens. That's what the whole smash is geared to do. And now, of course, the OEMs, Ford, General Motors, they want the honeypot, the tech honeypot, and Ford played that Rivian deal to the hilt. And that was really great. We can talk about financialization later. But I think that that will be, that's part of the future. They're, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jenny. I don't mean to take it.
No, I'm learning. Keep going.
Sorry. Where was I? I suddenly became shy. Forgive me.
Yeah.
Like I said, I don't talk to people much. Sorry.
So Jenny, you brought up the muscle car thing, and I think this would be an interesting thing to discuss here for a moment. So Tim Kuniskis, who runs Dodge, told Motor Trend, and I quote, "I'm juggling knives because I've got to keep two different huge factions happy because at some point those two factions will converge. The problem is no one knows when they will converge. My job is to provide confidence over the next 24 months that we're going to do this." And the factions and the convergence he's talking about are things like Hellcat engines and electric vehicles. So, the question becomes, we're seeing, astonishing numbers of horsepower that come from EVs, but is it the same visceral excitement that one can derive from driving a Challenger or a Charger? Or is the Challenger and Charger going to become something like, I don't know, show horses?
Ooh. Yeah, they could become show horses. Is it the same driving a Hellcat as it is driving a Audi e-tron GT? No, but can it be just as much fun? Yes, absolutely. So I think you've got this enthusiast group around power and performance, and I get it. And they're going to be the hardest ones to sway over to EVs. It's just going to take some time, and frankly, it might just take the market moving on without them until they get on board. It's a tough sell for the enthusiast crowd, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a done deal. I've driven a bunch of electric cars that will, get the juices going just fine. I just drove the Porsche Mission R race car, in LA. When I got out, they said, "Do you think it's loud enough?" And I was like, "What?" I was like screaming in my ear. And of course, this is important because what we've experientially people come to associate power performance with the linearity of volume and pitch and harmonics, at the top end. We've come to, but really we can decouple that pretty easily. And I'm driving the Rivian. I have the Rivian right now. So the Rivian is super quiet, super quiet in the body. The wheels and tires are big. They sent the big wheels and tires, but even with those big wheels and tires, it's fairly quiet. And and when you hit the go button, it just sings away to 100 miles an hour in no time. And yeah, I think this is a low hurdle for people. Young people are not going to have this problem. And electric vehicles, electric Baja racers, electric formula cars, electric endurance cars will all be loud. And the question is, will they be too loud?
Well, how did the Mission R sound? It was loud, but did it sound good?
Yeah, well, so the only thing that makes a noise besides the inverter is this big ass ring and pinion with some square cut dog cut gears, I think they're called, really square mesh. So it deliberately, right? So it makes this, chainsaw sound, and the hair on the back of your neck goes up, under your helmet. And hey, I have a little industry gossip.
Let's hear it. Let's hear it.
Now I'm going to be a gentleman here. I'm not going to say any names, but that car experienced a sudden stop in the hands of another journalist. Someone ran it into a barrier nose first the day before I drove it. And why? They got the brake and the pedal confused. And so they were going to a corner. They, went for the brake. They instead hit the gas, and it just scooted. So
notice how you said hit the gas. Did you see that?
Yeah, I know.
Gas.
The accelerator. Yeah. I still don't have a good word for it. Do you?
We know what you mean, and that's all that counts.
Right, but this goes to the point that motorsports is about sex and death, and so a little sex and death is not bad, and danger. Really, that's what has to be there for electric racing to matter.
See, this is why I'm asking you about how the Mission R sounded, because people buy Chargers and Challengers as much for the exhaust note as for the rest of the package. I mean,
inside or outside, that's an important point. You can't get a BMW that's loud anymore. European NCAP standards have just taken, drive-by standards are much stiffer. So you can't just buy a BMW M4 and rattle your neighbor's windows anymore. So that has sort of leveled the playing field in terms of the outsides of the car sound. The insides of the car, as Gary was suggesting, maybe, there's some sort of artificial textures that could be, linked to the way it's being driven. But, and I'm sure that can be I'm sure that can be. How persuasive it is, or even how necessary, I don't know.
Right, but this is the problem that Tim Kuniskis faces, juggling the knives here, is that right now, maybe with the exception of the Mission R, electric cars are whisper quiet, and you don't get that visceral feel. You get all the sensation of speed, but you don't get that great exhaust note induction noise to go along with it.
Yeah.
Now, most ICE cars, forget it. They're 19th century. They're not a lot of fun to listen to, but flat plane cranks and V8s and Corvettes and Mustangs, Chargers with and Challengers with superchargers that scream, that's as much as why those people are buying those cars. So electric cars can be a whole lot faster, give you a lot more straight line performance. And if you can give those buyers the same visceral sound, maybe Tim doesn't have to juggle so many knives then.
I'm just wondering, from what you said, John, it sounded like one of those knives is going to fall onto his foot because it's going to be.
Does Tim actually know how to juggle? I think that's. That reminds me, the knife juggling thing here reminded me of what I was going to say. I forgot. So 6 to 8% profit quarterly. Sometimes, somewhere, these corporations are going to have to eat into some of the reserves. I think it's they're. And if they don't, if that's going to require bold management, I think they're going to be left behind.
So is this eating into the reserve? Go back to the aforementioned Mr. Tavares's point about the additional cost of making electric vehicles versus the internal combustion engine powered vehicles they've been making for these many years.
Yeah. And I would say of all the companies, all the bigs that have the burden of legacy, Stellantis is right at the top. And also most poised to fall. I just don't see that they're making the right choices to be competitive in the next 5 years.
But I mean, even Volkswagen has come out and basically said that the price of batteries is so extraordinary, and you just think about the tremendous sunk costs that they're going to have in terms of all of these factories that they have around the world that are no longer going to be useful for them, and all this equipment and things that they have purchased.
That's the anchor that's holding them back, is their effort to fully amortize previously purchased factories. Do you know that Daimler Mercedes spent $2 billion on a diesel engine facility outside of Stuttgart in 2015? They finished it, right? They knew exactly what was coming. They knew exactly what was happening with diesel. And if they eat that $2 billion, I'm okay with it. Because that was bad management.
Do you think the shareholders would be fine with that?
They're my least concern of all. I'm much more concerned about AG Metall, but then the shareholders. Although I have to say that 25% are on the board, so okay, take it back.
Hey, this isn't going to last forever, but Carlos Tavares's arguments fall flat with me, because in Europe, governments are going to eat $8,000 of that battery cost anyway in direct incentives to consumers. Here in the U.S., it's $7,500. And that's, I think, where some of the traditionals have miscalculated. That's where I miscalculated a few years back, figuring out where this EV thing was going. I did not anticipate so many countries and cities would ban the internal combustion engine by the end of the decade. And I didn't see governments shoveling out as much money as they're doing in incentives. And I think, some of the other companies that we talked about earlier, Volkswagen, General Motors, Ford, have awakened to that fact. And the others who are crying poorhouse have missed the boat.
Yes.
Well, it'll be interesting to see if the Build Back Better bill is actually passed and how that impacts the federal incentives, and of course also how states then move forward. So do we see states that have been holding back on giving EV incentives jump into that as well?
Mm-hmm.
Are we convinced that people necessarily want to buy these cars?
I think there's a lot of interest. I think the one thing that people need to realize before they buy these cars is you've got to do your own infrastructure. So you need to figure out, how are you charging this at home. Really, you want to charge it at home. You want to be charging it overnight, right? You don't want to have a car where you're driving around trying to find charging in your neighborhood and running into broken EV chargers or whatnot. So I live in Chicago on the north side of the city. I'm in the city proper, and my parking spot is about a half block away from my house and in an alley. And I was able to install an EV charger, and I did not think I'd be able to do it. So, but it was a process. It was a huge process.
Well, you were an early
it's definitely
adopter,
important.
in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Let's start with the 100 million homeowners who can easily electrify. Let's change U.S. building codes in every state that new construction must have provision. And it's not the end of the world. I wired my own. I ran it out the street. The electrician said, this is not going to work, but I tried anyway. So now it works. Now it works fine. But yes, you asked, is anyone to buy these cars? I talked to someone, I'm at the risk of quoting him without permission, Mike Levine of Ford, who said, their hair is blown up by the demand for the Ford Lightning, and if anything, they misjudged the uptake, not only on that, but of the Maverick hybrid. They're sold out, and they can't build them fast enough. So, and I hear that story over and over and over again. I think, contrary to what may be, I don't know, conventional received wisdom, that this uptake will be low. I think it's going to be a big, fast turnover, like flip phones and smartphones. I see it. I see people really wanting these things. I have that Rivian. Oh my God. Dudes were following me around like, I had showgirls in the back.
Did you?
Insane. Well, not today. But no, and everybody, husband and wives were following it. Just, you could see that they wanted one. Suburbanites, every kids in my neighborhood anyway.
Yeah.
All right. So Dan, you mentioned the Maverick. Okay, the Maverick hybrid. Now, okay. So,
I got some numbers on that, by the way, just in case you need it.
So here's my question. I mean, is the Maverick hybrid in such demand because it's a $20,000 vehicle that is highly affordable across the board by lots of people, yet the aforementioned Lightning is easily twice that price? So Jenni, are you seeing people, looking for, value in some of their vehicles versus, higher car payments?
Yeah, I think people hold on to their cars for an average of 12 years now, but they still look for that value because cars are such a massive investment. With the Maverick, I think, in the hybrid version of it, it was amazing how quickly Ford shut down the ordering option on that vehicle. Like it was, you blinked and it was closed. So, I think that people are looking for value. I think Ford is finally finding that sweet spot with the, compact pickup truck. They tried to refill that with the Ranger. That wasn't what people were looking for. And what they're finding is, it's a mix of success here, of a mix of like a lot of good ideas and with the Maverick. So yeah, they've got to be pretty happy with that one.
Oh, I'm so glad we're having this conversation, because I just this morning talked to Mike about this very subject. Usually I'm just making stuff up, but this time I really have reporting. And look, they were very gratified by the response. But Mike said they've been telling people for months, look, this is going to be a limited deal. We may eventually cut off ordering, and then and for a long time, I think Mike said they were not sold out until like September or October. And so it's sort of all, the uptake was very sudden. And then people were going online and being denied the hybrid model. And Mike said to me that the frustration from communications was that, they'd been telling people all along, if you want one, order up. So, but that's one side. The other side is they're not making enough. Why are they not making enough? Production numbers, as we know, serve many masters. regulatory and compliance and financial and otherwise. So I think, it's amid that matrix of reasons, they decided on numbers south of 40,000 out of Hermosillo, but total roughly maybe 100,000 Maverick production a year. So 40%, they said.
40% will be hybrid, and then the
they
other
limit
60,
it. They cut it up, and they get far more orders than they can fill.
60% would be the normal internal combustion
Right, the
turbocharged
2-liter
engine.
Ecotec. Right.
Yeah, the problem is they're not getting pricing with the hybrid. So they're motivated, especially with production limited right now because of the chip shortage.
Of course.
Put it into the turbo engine. You get, instantly $2,000-3,000 more per truck right off the bat.
Of course.
That's how they're going to do it.
Yep. And I'll blame them. I mean, but I don't represent them. Yeah, I understand why they would do that.
So, I mean, this gets back to the question, though. I mean, Dan, you were suggesting that Toyota is just sort of playing footsie with environmentalism with hybrids. Yet, here we have the situation with the Maverick, which is being promoted as being a greener alternative, selling like mad. You mentioned at the top of the show about the what was it, $96,000 Prius Prime, which is a plug-in.
RAV4 Prime.
RAV4 Prime. So obviously there's demand for these things.
This is my I'm harboring this suspicion that the demand is wildly underestimated, and it is in the OEM's interest to hold down expectations in terms of production, because in this it is always going to be a trade-off. Now, in some of the OEMs' gradualism will be their undoing. And I think Stellantis is the one that will probably, by trying to lead from behind, will find itself left behind. Not least of all because there's a procurement and there's a limited number of batteries supplied North America, Europe, China that can be applied to their case. So and they're not they're not doing the arithmetic as far as I can tell. But also, isn't the Grand Wagoneer, is it really 17 feet long?
Yes.
Is it the new one?
It's big.
It's 17 feet?
Yeah.
They won't send me one, but but for obvious reasons. But but I haven't seen one in person. That's why when I saw your little bit on it, I was like, oh my God. Just talk about it as timely as it can possibly be. Talk about relevant. Anyway.
It reminded me of an Airstream trailer. And I say that in a good way. I mean, nice design, but sizable.
Yes.
But big.
Absolutely.
Right. Gary, you got anything else, or should we wrap up?
That's it. I think we should wrap it up. We hit all of the things we were going to talk about.
Jenny, it was terrific having you back on the show. And Dan, you too. We're going to have to do this again.
Thank you, Jenny. Thank you, John and Gary. I really enjoyed it. It was great to be with you, sort of live and in the same place. But I, watch you every week and tell the family I said hi.
Will do.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Jenny. Appreciate it.
Okay. Take care, everybody.
Bye, guys. See ya.
Autoline After Hours is brought to you by Bridgestone Tires, solutions for your journey, and by Magna.
Visit our website, Autoline.tv, where you can watch us live Thursday afternoons. Get your daily fix with Autoline Daily and in-depth analysis and interviews with Autoline This Week. There's all that and much more at Autoline.tv.